The moment I saw the for sale sign staked in front of our family beach house, my heart shattered like sea glass against the rocks. 30 years of memories, gone with a single decision my in-laws had made without consulting anyone. I gripped my steering wheel, knuckles white, as I stared at the weathered blue clapboard house that had been my sanctuary since marrying into the Sullivan family. "They can't do this," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. But they had, and according to my husband, they could. The property had always been in his parents' names, despite the fact that 4 generations of Sullivans had gathered there every summer. Despite the fact that my children had learned to swim in those waters. Despite the fact that I had spent countless hours repainting shutters, replacing floorboards, and planting the garden that now bloomed wildly around the wraparound porch. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I pulled out my phone and called my husband, Thomas. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice strained with the familiar tension that had been growing between us these past months. "They've already listed it," I said, skipping any greeting. "There's a sign up." Thomas sighed, the sound of his law firm's bustle audible in the background. "We talked about this, Claire. It's their house, their decision. Dad's medical bills—" "Don't," I cut him off. "Don't pretend this is about money. Your sister told me they're planning to buy that condo in Florida. This is about Diane wanting to be closer to her country club friends." The silence that followed told me I'd hit a nerve. My mother-in-law, Diane Sullivan, had never made it a secret that she found the beach house quaint but limiting. She preferred manicured golf courses to our wild stretch of Atlantic coastline. "Can we not do this now?" Thomas finally said. "I've got the Hendrickson merger meeting in 5 minutes." "When? Then. When would be a good time to discuss the fact that your parents are erasing our family history without even having a conversation with their own children about it? Mom and Dad built that house, Claire. It's theirs to sell." I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of my car window. "Your grandfather chose that land. Your father might have built the structure, but 4 generations made it a home." "I'll be home around 7, Thomas said, his voice softening slightly. "We'll talk then." I ended the call without saying goodbye, my eyes drawn back to the house. A woman in a crisp blazer was now standing by the sign, talking animatedly on her phone. The real estate agent, already circling like a vulture, acting. On impulse, I got out of my car and walked across the road to the property. Sand from the nearby beach had blown across the oyster shell driveway, crunching beneath my feet with each step. The familiar sound unleashed a flood of memories. Thomas carrying our daughter Emma on his shoulders up this very drive after her first swim in the ocean. Our son Jack learning to ride his bike on the flat stretch by the garage. Thomas's father, Richard, teaching all the grandkids how to shuck oysters on the back deck. The real estate agent turned as I approached, quickly hanging up her call and plastering on a professional smile. "Good afternoon. Are you interested in this property? It just went on the market this morning, and I can tell you it won't last long. Waterfront properties in this area are extremely rare." I forced a smile in return. "I know. My family has owned it for generations." Her smile faltered just slightly. "Oh, you must be related to the Sullivans. They've mentioned there might be some family members coming by. Such a special place." "How much are they asking?" I asked, ignoring her attempt at small talk. She hesitated before answering. "The listing price is $1.2 million, which is actually quite reasonable given the location and the size of the lot. Property values along this stretch have skyrocketed in the last 5 years." I nodded, trying to hide the shock that rippled through me. $1.2 million. The house that had been purchased for practically nothing in the 1950s was now worth more than I could ever hope to afford on my teacher's salary. Even with Thomas's partner income at the law firm, it was a stretch. "Would you like to see inside?" the agent offered. "I'm Caroline, by the way." Caroline Morris. Claire Sullivan, I replied. And no, thank you. I know every inch of this house. I turned to leave, but something made me stop. A movement in the upstairs window, the bedroom that had been ours every summer since Thomas and I had gotten married. For a second, I could have sworn I saw someone looking down at me, but I knew the house should have been empty. Is someone else viewing the property right now? I asked Caroline. She looked confused. No, you're the first person I've shown it to. The cleaning crew was here earlier, but they should be gone by now. I stared back up at the window, but there was nothing there. Just my imagination, fueled by grief and anger. If you're interested in making an offer, I'd suggest moving quickly, Caroline said, misreading my pause. As I mentioned, waterfront properties in this area. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I know the market, I said, more sharply than I'd intended. I've lived here my entire life. Walking back to my car, I felt like a stranger trespassing on someone else's property, not a family member who had spent every summer of her married life in that house. The feeling was so disorienting that I had to grip the car door to steady myself before getting in. Instead of starting the engine, I sat there, watching Caroline place a lockbox on the front door. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. Let it go, Claire. Please, for all our sakes. Let it go, as if 30 years of memories could be boxed up and stored away like Christmas decorations, as if I could simply forget the sound of screen doors slamming as children ran in and out, the smell of Richard's famous clam chowder simmering on the stove, the feel of the worn wooden steps beneath my bare feet. I started the car, but didn't. Put it in drive. Instead, I pulled up my banking app and checked our savings account. Between my teacher's pension that I'd cashed out early when we thought Jack might need specialized medical care, he didn't, thank God, and the inheritance I'd received when my mother passed 2 years ago, we had about $300,000 liquid. Nowhere near enough, but then my eyes drifted to another account, one I rarely looked at. My just-in-case fund, as I privately called it. Money I'd been putting aside for 20 years, ever since I overheard Diane telling a friend that she wasn't sure her son's marriage to the local girl would last. Every birthday check, every small raise, every bit of extra cash had gone into that account. It now held just over $200,000. Combined with our savings, we'd have $500,000. Still not enough, but it was a start. A plan began to form in my mind, a risky, possibly foolish plan. But the alternative, watching strangers move into the house where my children had grown up, where my marriage had weathered its storms, where 4 generations of Sullivans had gathered, was unthinkable. I put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb, my decision made. Thomas had told me to let it go, but I had no intention of letting anything go, not without a fight. What my husband and his parents didn't know was that before I was just a teacher, I had worked for 3 years at the largest real estate developer in the county. I knew how property deals worked. I knew about shell companies, silent partners, and private bids, and I knew exactly who to call first. As I drove away from the beach house, I glanced in my rearview mirror at its weathered blue facade. "Don't worry," I whispered. "I'm coming back for you. Coming back for you." My Jeep idled outside Maggie Crawford's law office as rain pattered against the windshield. I'd known Maggie since we were kids making sandcastles on the same stretch of beach my in-laws were now selling. Unlike me, Maggie had left our coastal town for law school, returning with credentials that made even Thomas's prestigious firm take notice when they faced her in court. "You're crazy," Maggie said, leaning back in her leather chair after I'd explained my plan. Her office smelled of coffee and old books, the walls lined with maritime law texts, her specialty. Absolutely out of your mind, and I love it. "So, you'll help me?" I asked, hope fluttering in my chest like a trapped bird. "Form a shell corporation to secretly buy your in-laws' beach house out from under them? Without your husband knowing? She tapped her pen against her legal pad. That's not just risky, Claire. That's the financial equivalent of lighting a match in a room full of dynamite. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I twisted my wedding ring, a simple gold band Thomas had given me when we couldn't afford anything else. You don't understand what this house means. It's where Thomas proposed to me on the back deck during a thunderstorm because he was too nervous to wait for good weather. It's where Emma took her first steps. It's where Jack recovered after his surgery. My voice caught, remembering those terrifying weeks when we thought we might lose him. Maggie's expression softened. Hey, I get it. I still remember Richard teaching us to body surf when we were 13. Remember how he called the good waves humdingers? The memory made me laugh through incipient tears. And he'd always shout, "This one's a humdinger, ladies. Paddle now or regret it forever." Exactly. Maggie's smile faded. But Claire, you're talking about $1.2 million. You said you have $500,000. Where's the rest coming from? I straightened my shoulders. I've got equity in our primary home. I can pull out a second mortgage without Thomas knowing, at least initially. And I've already called Francis Dupree. Maggie's eyebrows shot up. The Francis Dupree? The eccentric millionaire who buys up historic properties? The very same. She was my mother's friend. I've explained the situation, and she's willing to be a silent partner. She'll put in the remaining amount in exchange for certain guarantees that the property's historic character will be preserved. And you're planning to pull this off without Thomas finding out until, Maggie prompted. Until it's done, I said firmly. Once the house is secure, I'll tell him everything. Maggie shook her head. And you think he'll just forgive the deception? The financial risk? Claire, this could end your marriage? The rain intensified outside, drumming against the windows. You know what else could end my marriage? Watching Thomas realize too late what his parents have thrown away. The regret will eat him alive. Maggie studied me, then nodded once. Okay. Sullivan, let's do this, but we'll need to move fast. How soon can you get me the documents for your home equity line? I submitted the application this morning, claimed it was for renovations. Should be approved by tomorrow? Good. And Frances is ready to transfer her share? Just waiting for your instructions on where to send it. Maggie began typing on her computer. I'll create Sandpiper Holdings, LLC today. You'll be a silent partner, along with Frances. On paper, it'll look like a regular investment company interested in beachfront properties. I exhaled slowly, feeling like I'd just stepped off a cliff. Thank you, Maggie. She paused her typing. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get complicated. And you're going to need to be one hell of an actress around Thomas and his family. When I arrived home that evening, Thomas was already there, his tall frame hunched over his laptop at the kitchen island. The house smelled of takeout. Chinese from the looks of the containers. I got your favorite, he said without looking. Up. Kung Pao chicken. Extra spicy. I set my purse down, careful to tuck away Maggie's business card. Thanks. He finally looked up, his hazel eyes, the same ones our daughter had inherited, searching my face. You still mad about the beach? House? The casual way he asked it, as if we were discussing something trivial like a missed dinner reservation, made me want to scream. Instead, I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a bottle of water, buying time to compose myself. I'm disappointed, I said carefully, not just about the decision, but about how it was made. Behind closed doors, without family discussion. Thomas closed his laptop. What was there to discuss, Claire? You know Dad's medical bills wiped out a lot of their retirement savings. The house costs a fortune to maintain. They're making a practical decision. And the Florida condo? Is that practical too? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Thomas's jaw tightened. That's different. The condo is smaller, newer, less upkeep, and, yes, closer to Mom's friends. Is that such a crime? She spent 50 years doing what Dad wanted. I took a bite of Kung Pao chicken, not tasting it. You really believe your mother has spent 50 years sacrificing her desires? The woman who insisted on remodeling their kitchen 3 times in a decade? That's not fair, Claire. No? What about the time she convinced your dad to skip Jack's championship game because her book club had tickets to that touring Broadway show? Thomas pushed his food away. You've never forgiven her for that, have you? One missed baseball game 7 years ago. It wasn't about the game. It was about Jack's face when he looked up into the stands and realized his grandparents weren't there after they'd promised. I could see Thomas retreating emotionally, the way he always did when conversations got too heated. His lawyer face was coming on, detached, analytical. Look, he said in his courtroom voice, the decision's been made. The house is on the market. I understand you're upset, but there's nothing we can do about it now. I thought about the paperwork sitting in my purse, about Francis Dupree's commitment, about Maggie creating Sandpiper Holdings at this very moment. You're right, I said, surprising him. What's done is done. Thomas looked suspicious at my sudden capitulation. Really? That's it? I shrugged, focusing on spearing a piece of chicken. I had time to think today. Maybe it is for the best. That place has always needed work. Exactly, Thomas said, relief evident in his voice. And now we can start our own tradition somewhere else. Maybe find a place in the Outer Banks like you've always wanted. The irony of him suddenly remembering my long-ignored desire for an Outer Banks vacation home wasn't lost on me, but I nodded agreeably. Maybe, I said. How are the kids doing with the news? Thomas winced. I haven't told them yet. I thought maybe we could do it together this weekend. Of course he hadn't told them. Thomas hated being the bearer of bad news, especially to Emma and Jack. He'd once made me tell them their dog had died while he conveniently had a work emergency. Fine, I agreed, but I'm not going to pretend I'm happy about it. Fair enough. As Thomas returned to his laptop, I slipped away to our home office and closed the door. I needed to check if my home equity line had been approved. My hands trembled, slightly as I logged into our bank account. There it was, $350,000 available credit, pending final documentation. Combined with my secret fund and Francis's contribution, we'd have enough to make a competitive offer on the beach house. My phone buzzed with a text from Maggie. Sandpiper is officially hatched. Meeting with Caroline Morris tomorrow at 2 p.m. Can you make it? I texted back quickly. I'll be there. A soft knock on the office door made me jump. I quickly closed the browser as Thomas poked his head in. Emma's on the phone, he said. Wants to know if we're still doing Memorial Day at the beach house. My heart contracted painfully. Memorial Day at the Sullivan Beach House was our most sacred tradition, 4 generations gathering for the unofficial start of summer. What did you tell her? I asked. That we'd call her back. Thomas looked uncomfortable. What should we say? I stood up, taking the phone from him. I'll talk to her. But Thomas, this is exactly what I mean. 50 years of Memorial Days and your parents didn't think that was worth a family conversation before they put up a for sale sign? He didn't answer, just handed me the phone and walked away. Hey, sweetheart. I said to Emma, forcing cheer into my voice. Mom, please tell me Grandma and Grandpa aren't seriously selling the beach house? Tyler just called and said his mom saw a listing online. I wandered to the window, looking out at the spring rain falling on our suburban yard. Nothing like the wild beauty of the oceanfront property that had been our summer sanctuary for so long. It's complicated, Em. Grandpa's medical bills, their retirement plans. But Memorial Day, what about the bonfire? And Dad's clam bake? And the Sullivan family? Olympics? Her voice cracked. Jack and I were going to team up this year. We've been practicing our 3-legged race. I closed my eyes, picturing my children running across the sand. Thomas and his brother manning the grill, Diane reluctantly judging the sandcastle competition, while Richard cheered everyone on from his favorite deck chair. In that moment, my resolve hardened like concrete. "Don't worry about Memorial Day yet," I told my daughter. "A lot can happen between now and then." "What does that mean? Are you and Dad trying to buy it?" "Not exactly," I said, which wasn't a lie. "Just don't lose hope, okay? And don't tell your brother yet. Let Dad and I talk to him." After I hung up, I stood in the quiet office, the weight of my secret plan heavy on my shoulders. Tomorrow, Caroline Morris would meet with representatives from Sandpiper Holdings, never knowing that one of them was the daughter-in-law of the sellers. I thought about what Maggie had said, that this could end my marriage. Maybe she was right. But standing by while a piece of our family's soul was sold to strangers wasn't something I could live with either. Thomas had already gone upstairs when I emerged from the office. I could hear the shower running. In our bedroom, his phone lit, up with a text. I wasn't the snooping type, but the name on the screen caught my attention. Mom. Against my better judgment, I glanced at the message. "Showed house today. Strong interest already, hoping for multiple offers by week's end." Multiple offers. They were expecting a bidding war. I needed to call Francis Dupree first thing in the morning. If we were going to save the Sullivan Beach House, we'd need to move even faster than I thought. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the previous day's rain leaving everything looking washed and renewed. I'd barely slept, my mind racing with plans, doubts, and the occasional bolt of panic. What was I doing? Risking my marriage, our financial security, all for a house? But it wasn't just a house. I waited until Thomas left for work, kissing him goodbye with a performance of normalcy that deserved an Academy Award. The moment his car disappeared down our tree-lined street, I called Francis Dupree. "Claire, darling," her smoky voice answered, bringing me back to childhood days when she and my mother would sit on our porch, drinking gin and tonics and laughing about things I was too young to understand. "I've been expecting your call. They're anticipating multiple offers," I said without preamble. "We need to move faster than we thought." The plot thickens. Francis had always had a flair for the dramatic. "Have you seen the listing online? Criminally underpriced, if you ask me. Your in-laws clearly know nothing about current market values." I hadn't even thought to look online. Underpriced at $1.2 million? For 50 feet of private beachfront? In that location? With the zoning allowing for vacation rentals? Absolutely. If developers get their hands on it, they'll tear down that charming old house and build a monstrosity they can rent out for $10,000 a week. The thought of the Sullivan Beach House being demolished made me physically ill. "All the more reason to move quickly," I said. "I've transferred $600,000 to the account your lawyer friend set up," Francis said. "I'm prepared to go higher if needed." "Francis, thank you doesn't seem adequate." "Your mother was my dearest friend," she replied, her voice softening. "And that house. Well, I've had a few memorable evenings on that deck myself." The summer of '78 was particularly enchanting. I didn't ask for details. Francis's colorful past was legendary in our town. "I'll keep you updated after today's meeting," I promised. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maggie and I arrived at Caroline Morris's real estate office 10 minutes early. Maggie looked every inch the successful lawyer in a navy suit, while I'd dressed in my most professional outfit, a cream blouse and charcoal pencil skirt I normally saved for parent-teacher conferences. "Remember," Maggie whispered as we waited, "in the tastefully decorated reception area, you're Amanda Wilson from Sandpiper Holdings. You've never set foot in that beach house before yesterday." I nodded, focusing on my breathing. I'd always been a terrible liar, a fact Thomas frequently teased me about. The time I tried to throw him a surprise birthday party, I'd given it away 3 weeks early through a series of suspicious behaviors and obvious tells. What if she recognizes me? I whispered back. I told her my name yesterday. She meets dozens of people every week. Just keep your sunglasses on until we're inside, and you'll be fine. Caroline emerged from her office, all efficient smiles and firm handshakes. If she recognized me, she didn't show it. Sandpiper Holdings, she said, leading us into a conference room. I don't believe I'm familiar with your company. We're relatively new to this market, Maggie explained smoothly. But not to real estate investment. We specialize in distinctive waterfront properties with historical significance. Caroline's eyes lit up with dollar signs. Well, the Sullivan property certainly qualifies. It's one of the last original beach houses in the area. Built in 1952, I believe. 1954, I corrected automatically, then caught myself. According to the listing details, I mean. Caroline gave me a curious look, but continued her pitch. The location is absolutely premium. 50 feet of private beachfront, unobstructed views, grandfathered setbacks that you couldn't get permitted today. We noticed, Maggie said, and we're very interested. So interested, in fact, that we'd like to make an offer today, before your open house this weekend. Caroline couldn't hide her surprise, or her delight. Well, the Sullivan family will certainly be pleased to hear that. They're quite eager to move forward quickly. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep my expression neutral. Of course they were eager. Diane was probably already shopping for golf attire for her new Florida life. We're prepared to offer $1.3 million, Maggie stated. All cash, no financing, contingencies. We can close in 30 days or less. Caroline's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing genuine shock. $1.3 million, that's quite generous. The property is worth it, I said quietly. Those sunset views alone, We would need one condition, however, Maggie added. We want to lock this down immediately, today. We'd need the Sullivans to take the property off the market and cancel the upcoming open houses, in exchange for a significant earnest money deposit. Caroline hesitated. That's an unusual request. The sellers typically want maximum exposure to ensure they're getting the best possible price. $100,000, Maggie countered. Non-refundable earnest money today. To take it off the market. Immediately. I held my breath. This was the critical part of our plan. If the house went to the open house, developers might come in with even higher offers, pushing it beyond what even Francis could match. I'll need to speak with the Sullivans, Caroline said. Would you excuse me for a few minutes? The moment she left the room, I exhaled sharply. Do you think they'll go for it? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. $100,000 in non-refundable. Earnest money is hard to turn down, Maggie replied. Plus, they're getting more than their asking price without having to go through the hassle of an open house. I nodded, trying to calm my racing heart. And once they accept, they can't back out when they realize who's really buying it, right? Not. Legally, no. But Claire, Maggie gave me a serious look. You understand that eventually they will find out, and Thomas will find out not just about the purchase, but about the second mortgage, your secret fund, all of it. I know, I said softly. But by then, the house will be safe. Caroline returned 15 minutes later, her face professionally composed, but her eyes excited. I've just spoken with Mrs. Sullivan, she said. They're very interested in your offer, especially given the cash terms and quick closing. However, they've asked if you would consider allowing them to host one final Memorial Day gathering at the property before closing. It's apparently a long-standing family tradition. I nearly laughed out loud at the irony. So now Diane cared about family traditions? That would be acceptable, Maggie answered for me. As long as it's written into the contract that they assume all liability and leave the property in its original condition. Excellent. Then we have a deal in principle. If you're ready to complete the paperwork, we can make this official today. 2 hours later, I sat in Maggie's office, staring at the signed purchase agreement in disbelief. Just like that, Sandpiper Holdings, which was partly me, had bought the Sullivan Beach House for $1.3 million. I can't believe it worked, I whispered. It's not over yet, Maggie cautioned. The earnest money will be transferred today, but we still have inspections, the final closing, and eventually you'll have to tell Thomas. I nodded, reality beginning to set in. I'll tell him after Memorial Day, once he sees how much the house still means to everyone. And if he's angry? If he can't forgive the deception? I looked out Maggie's window at the harbor beyond, fishing boats bobbing in the afternoon sun. Then at least the house will still be in the family for Emma and Jack, and their children someday. For the next 3 weeks, I lived a double life that would have impressed any spy. By day, I was Claire Sullivan, suburban high school English, teacher and mother of 2 grown children, apparently accepting the sale of her beloved family beach house with reluctant grace. By night, I was Amanda Wilson, secret part owner of Sandpiper Holdings, reviewing inspection reports and signing closing documents. Thomas, meanwhile, remained oblivious, preoccupied with a difficult case that kept him at the office until late, most evenings. When the subject of the beach house came up, I managed to deflect without outright lying, a distinction that helped me sleep at night, if only barely. Mom said they've accepted an offer, Thomas mentioned one evening as we prepared dinner. Some investment company, paying above asking price. That's good for them, I replied, focusing intently on chopping carrots. Quick sale, good price. They must be relieved. Thomas studied me, suspicious of my calm reaction. You're taking this better than I expected. I shrugged. Like you said, what's done is done. What I didn't tell him was that I'd spent the afternoon on a conference call with Francis and an architect, discussing how to update the beach house's aging plumbing without disrupting its historic character. The most difficult part was keeping our children in the dark. Emma called twice more about Memorial Day plans, and each time I had to carefully navigate the conversation without revealing too much. Yes, we're still having Memorial Day at the beach house, I told her. Grandma and Grandpa made special arrangements, with the buyers. So it's definitely sold? Emma asked, her disappointment palpable even over the phone. There's no chance they'll change their minds? The house is sold, I answered truthfully. But don't worry about Memorial Day. Just come home and enjoy it like always. Finally, the closing date arrived, just 3 days before Memorial Day weekend. I took a personal day from school, claiming a doctor's appointment, and met Maggie at the title company's office. Frances attended via video call from her winter home in Arizona. Congratulations, the closing agent said, as I signed the final document, using my real name on this one, as the true owner of Sandpiper Holdings was finally revealed in the official records. You're now the owner of one of the most beautiful properties on the coast. I felt simultaneously elated and terrified. I had done it. I had saved the Sullivan Beach House. Now I just had to save my marriage. The day before Memorial Day, Thomas and I drove to the beach house together, ostensibly to help his parents prepare for the family gathering. In reality, Richard and Diane were already on their way to Florida, to close on their new condo, having easily agreed to let the traditional celebration continue one last time. I'm surprised Mom and Dad aren't here yet, Thomas remarked as we pulled into the oyster shell driveway. Dad usually has the grill going, by now. They might be running late, I offered vaguely, fumbling with my purse to hide my nervousness. Inside was a set of keys the closing agent had given me. The new keys to the Sullivan Beach House, now technically the Wilson Dupree Beach House, though no one knew that yet except Maggie, Francis, and me. The house looked exactly the same as it always had. Weathered blue clapboard, white trim beginning to peel in places, wicker furniture on the wraparound porch collecting wind-blown sand. But it felt different to me now. It was saved. It was ours. It would remain in the family for Emma and Jack, and hopefully their children too. Thomas used his key to unlock the front door, unaware that the locks would be changed next week after our secret was revealed. We stepped into the familiar foyer, with its walls of family photos chronicling 5 decades of Sullivan summers. "Smells musty," Thomas commented. "Mom must not have been down to air it out." "I'll open some windows," I offered, moving through the house with a sense of proprietary care that was no longer just emotional but legal. Each squeaky floorboard, each sun-faded curtain, each chipped coffee mug in the kitchen cabinets was now officially part of my stewardship. As I opened the French doors to the back deck, the sound of waves washing against the shore filled the house. Salt air rushed in, and with it, a lifetime of memories. Emma taking her first wobbly steps across this very deck, Jack recuperating in the hammock after his surgery, Thomas and I dancing under the stars on our 10th anniversary while Richard played his old records. 4 generations of Sullivans gathered around the massive picnic table for countless meals. "Hey," Thomas said, coming up behind me. "You okay? You look intense." I turned to him, suddenly overwhelmed by the weight of my secret. "Thomas, there's something I need to tell you about the house." His phone rang before I could continue. He glanced at the screen. "It's Mom. Maybe they're almost here." He answered, "Hey, Mom. We just got to the house. Where are you guys?" I watched his expression change from casual to confused to alarmed. "What do you mean? Don't touch anything. It's Memorial Day weekend. The whole family's coming tomorrow." He paused, listening. "What closing? You closed last week?" Another pause. Who the hell is Sandpiper Holdings? My heart pounded so hard I was sure he could hear it. This wasn't how I'd planned to tell him. "That's impossible," Thomas continued, his voice rising. "Why would they let us use the house if they just bought it?" He looked at me, confusion written across his face. "No, Claire and I are already here. We used our key like always." Another pause. "Well, no alarm went off. Everything looks normal." Could faintly hear Diane's agitated voice through the phone. Thomas's face darkened as he listened. "Fine. We'll leave right now. But you need to call everyone and tell them Memorial Day is canceled." He hung up, looking bewildered. "We have to go. Apparently the house was sold last week to some investment company. And we're trespassing." "Thomas," I said quietly. "We're not trespassing." "What do you mean?" "Mom just said, 'We're not trespassing,'" I repeated, drawing a deep breath. "Because I'm Sandpiper Holdings. Well, part of it. I bought the beach house, Thomas. I bought it back. House, Thomas. I bought it back. House, Thomas." Thomas stared at me, his face cycling through emotions so quickly I could barely track them. Confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally, anger that darkened his features like an approaching storm. "You... what?" His voice was dangerously quiet. Stood my ground on the weathered deck planks where we'd danced on so many summer nights. "I bought the beach house through a company called Sandpiper Holdings that Maggie Crawford helped me set up." "Maggie Crawford? Your childhood friend who became a lawyer?" Thomas ran his hand through his hair, his wedding ring catching the late afternoon sunlight. "I don't understand. How could you possibly afford—" "I had savings," I said. "Money I've been putting aside for years, and I took out a second mortgage on our home." "You did what?" The quiet was gone now, replaced by a thunderous disbelief that matched the waves crashing against the shore below. "Without discussing it with me? Without even telling me?" "Like your parents discussed selling this place with us?" I countered, my own anger rising to meet his. "They were going to erase 40 years of family history without so much as a family meeting, Thomas." He paced the deck, the boards creaking beneath his weight. "So this was revenge? Is that it?" Get back at my parents by what? Deceiving me? Putting our financial security at risk? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. It wasn't revenge, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. It was preservation, protection of something precious that your mother was too eager to discard. Don't you dare make this about my mother, Thomas snapped. This is about you going behind my back and making financial decisions that affect both of us without even… His phone rang again. He glanced at it, his jaw clenching. It's Mom again. Are you going to tell her who Sandpiper Holdings really is? I asked quietly. The look he gave me could have frozen the ocean. I don't even know who you really are right now, Claire. He answered the phone, turning away from me to stare out at the horizon where the Atlantic met the sky in a hazy blue line. Mom, I need to call you back. Yes, we're leaving. No, I don't know anything about the buyers. I'll call you later. When he hung up, he didn't turn around immediately. His shoulders rose and fell with deep breaths, and I could see him struggling to regain his composure, the lawyer in him taking over, pushing emotion aside to deal with facts. How much? He finally asked, still facing the ocean. $1.3 million. He whirled around. 1.3. Are you out of your mind? Our retirement, our savings. I didn't use all our retirement savings, I interrupted. I had help. Francis Dupree invested as a partner. Thomas looked like I'd slapped him. Francis Dupree? Your mother's eccentric friend? The one who collects historic properties like some people collect stamps? What does she get out of this? Minority. Ownership and the promise that we'll maintain the house's historic character. She was my mother's best friend, Thomas. She remembers what this place means to our family. Our family, Thomas repeated, his voice hollow. The family you just deceived. The husband you lied to. The financial future you gambled with. I moved closer, desperate to make him understand. I didn't see another way. You wouldn't even discuss trying to buy it. You just accepted your parents' decision without a fight. Because it was their decision to make. His voice rose again. Their house, their retirement. It stopped being just their house, the moment your father promised it. Would stay in the family, I said. The moment they hosted the first Sullivan Family Olympics when Emma was 4. The moment Jack recovered here after we thought we might lose him. This house is sewn into the fabric of who we are as a family, Thomas. And I couldn't let that go without a fight. He shook his head, looking at me as if I were a stranger. So, you lied. For weeks. Created a shell company. Took out a mortgage I didn't know about. Yes, I admitted. And I'd do it again. The certainty in my voice seemed to catch him off guard. He sank down onto the weathered bench that faced the sea, the same bench where Richard had taught all the grandkids to bait fishing hooks. How are we supposed to maintain this place? He asked after a long silence. The roof needs replacing. The plumbing is a disaster waiting to happen. That's part of why they sold it, Claire. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Francis and I have set aside funds for repairs, I said, sitting beside him but careful not to touch him yet. We've already consulted with an architect who specializes in historic beach properties. Thomas let out a humorless laugh. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I tried to. Except how I would feel about being kept in the dark. Except how this looks to my parents, their own daughter-in-law going behind their backs. I'm sorry for hurting you, I said softly. But I'm not sorry for saving this place. The salt-laden breeze ruffled his hair, and for a moment, he looked like the young lawyer I'd fallen in love with, the one who proposed right here on this deck during a thunderstorm because he couldn't wait another minute to ask me to be his wife. My mother is going to lose her mind, Thomas said finally. You know that, right? Probably, I agreed. But she'll still have her country club life in Florida. And your father, I think he might secretly be relieved. Thomas raised an eyebrow, skeptical. Think about it, I continued. He never wanted to sell this place. Remember how he kept finding excuses to delay listing it? How he insisted on hosting one last Memorial Day even after it was sold? Your father loves this house as much as we do. A gull called overhead, wheeling against the deepening blue sky. The sun was beginning its slow descent toward the water, painting everything in gold. This time of day had always been magical at the beach house. Not quite afternoon, not quite evening, a liminal space where time seemed suspended. I need some time to process this, Thomas said finally, standing up. I'm going for a walk. Thomas, don't. He cut me off. Just give me some space, Claire. I watched him descend the stairs to the beach, his figure growing smaller as he walked along the shoreline. The same shoreline where we'd collected shells with Emma and Jack, where we'd run with the family dogs over the years, where we'd stolen midnight skinny dips when the kids were finally asleep. My phone buzzed with a text from Maggie. How did he take it? I typed back. About as well as expected, which is to say, not well. Her response came quickly. He'll come around. Thomas has always been the reasonable one in that family. I wasn't so sure. In all our years of marriage, I'd never deceived Thomas like this. We'd had our disagreements, our struggles, what couple didn't after nearly 30 years? But there had always been honesty between us. Inside the house, I wandered from room to room, touching familiar objects, straightening pictures that didn't need straightening. In the kitchen, a faded recipe card in Richard's handwriting still hung on the refrigerator. World-famous clam chowder. Don't tell Mother, but there's bacon. In the living room, the collection of board games with missing pieces and tattered boxes remained stacked in the corner cabinet. Upstairs, in what had always been our bedroom, the patchwork quilt Richard's mother had made still covered the bed. Everything was the same, and yet everything had changed. My phone rang. Frances. This time. Well? She asked without preamble. Has the storm hit yet? Thomas knows, I confirmed. He's processing, which means he's currently walking on the beach, probably calculating exactly how many financial and marital violations I've committed. Frances's throaty laugh carried through the phone. Men always think everything can be quantified. Emotions, betrayal, love. They want to measure it all with their little mental rulers. He's hurt, Frances, and he has every right to be. Of course he does, she agreed, surprising me. You went behind his back and made an enormous decision without him. That would hurt anyone. But here's what I know after 3 marriages and more love affairs than I care to count. Hurt fades when it's overwhelmed by something stronger. Like what? Like watching his children and future grandchildren experience the joy of that house. Like seeing his father's relief that the place wasn't sold to strangers. Like realizing his clever wife saved something precious that can never be replaced. Just wait, Claire. Memorial Day will be your vindication. I wasn't nearly as confident, but Frances had lived many more years and loved many more men than I had. How soon before the in-laws descend upon you? She asked. They're closing on their Florida condo today. I imagine they'll be here tomorrow. Once they process what's happened, Diane will be furious. Diane has always been furious about something, Frances remarked. I remember her at your wedding, complaining that the lobster rolls weren't authentic because they used the wrong kind of mayonnaise. Despite everything, I laughed. She's still talking about those lobster rolls 29 years later. Let her rage, Frances advised. You hold your ground. That house belongs to the future now, to Emma and Jack and their children. Not to Diane's golf club aspirations. After we hung up, I went back to the deck and sat on the steps, watching Thomas's distant figure on the beach. He'd stopped walking and was sitting on his rock, a large flat boulder at the far end of the private beach that had been his thinking spot since childhood. As the sun sank lower casting long shadows across the sand, I saw him stand and begin the walk back toward the house. His steps were measured, deliberate. The anger seemed to have drained from his posture, replaced by something I couldn't quite identify from this distance. When he reached the bottom of the steps, he looked up at me, his face unreadable in the fading light. "I just got a text from Emma," he said. "She and Jack are both driving down tonight instead of tomorrow." Apparently, Mom called them in a panic saying Memorial Day was canceled because the beach house had been sold to some corporate vultures. I winced. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That the house was indeed sold, but that Memorial Day is definitely still happening." He climbed the steps slowly. "I didn't tell her who bought it. I thought, maybe that should come from both of us." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something. A small crack in the wall of his anger. A willingness to stand together in this moment, even if he wasn't ready to fully accept what I'd done. "Thank you," I said quietly. He nodded, then looked out at the horizon where the first stars were beginning to appear. "My father cried when they signed the papers to sell this place. Did you know that?" My stoic, never shows emotion father had tears running down his face. My mother pretended not to notice. I hadn't known that. The image of Richard Sullivan, former Marine career engineer, man of few words, crying as he signed away his beloved beach house, broke my heart. "Your mother texted while you were walking," I admitted. I didn't answer. Thomas sighed, rubbing his temples. "They'll be here tomorrow afternoon. Mom's already talking about lawyers, about how the sale was done under false pretenses. Maggie says the sale is legally sound. I didn't misrepresent anything." This isn't about legality, Claire. It's about family. It's about trust. The irony of him lecturing me about family trust when his parents had unilaterally decided to sell our shared sanctuary wasn't lost on me, but I bit back the retort. Now wasn't the time for scoring points. "What happens tomorrow?" I asked instead. Thomas looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since my revelation. "Tomorrow, we tell our children that their mothers secretly bought back their grandparents' beach house. Then we face my parents together." "Together?" I repeated, hardly daring to hope. "I'm still angry," he clarified. "I'm still processing what this means for us, for our trust. But I'm not going to let you face my mother's wrath alone. That would be—" A tiny smile flickered at the corner of his mouth. "Well, even I'm not that cruel." It wasn't much, but it was a start. As twilight deepened into night, we stood side by side on the deck of the house that had seen so much of our family's history, and would now, thanks to my deception and determination, see its future too. "We should probably go inside," Thomas said eventually. "Emma and Jack will be here in a few hours. Should we make up the guest rooms?" I asked. "Or are we all sleeping at a hotel tonight?" Thomas was quiet for a long moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out his keys. The old keys to a house that was now, technically, mine. "No hotel," he said finally, holding the keys out to me like an offering. "We're home. We're home."